Hi there, knife people. Hello, lady and gentlemen. I'm shooting for the shortest intro ever, because today we're looking at Kershaw Launch 20, a recently released knife. And it is quite different from previous launches, of which I only have Launch 1 and 19. Let's take a look at the pivot hardware arrangement. Most launches, except for 8, 11, 15, and 16, the hexagonal pivot nut is on the clip side of the knife, while the pivot screw is on the show side, which is reversed on Launch 20, with the screw on the clip side and the pivot nut completely hidden under this carbon overlay, which extends all the way to the ricasso on the show side. This is not a peel and stick overlay. It's an actual plate of carbon fiber that has thickness, and my knife-loving brain tells me I need to measure it later. For now, I would like to start reviewing this knife as a system. The knife's edge is the heart of the knife. That's why, going forward, I will start all my reviews with looking at the edge. And this edge is located on a MagnaCut blade. On their website, Kershaw claims 62 to 64 HRC hardness, and I promise I'll thoroughly test this theory. But first, I place the knife edge up under the microscope. It's on the left, and on the right it's connected to my iPad. We are looking at a very clean apex. Very small apex radius is in evidence. This apex will bite in the material like it's not even there. How long and how straight of a cut you will be able to make entirely depends on the edge geometry. And that's why I'm using the measuring tape to show you just how symmetrical this edge is. This edge shows how precise Kershaw's manufacturing is. They cut no corners, grinding those angles. Pun fully intended. Clearly this blade was stropped. They left behind this tiny little burr here, and the black line is the polishing compound used during stropping. So let's flip it on its side and look at the secondary bevel. Let me adjust my microscope. Okay. My lamp is giving this golden shine. It's not gold plated, I assure you. Aha, there's a little bit of convexity to the apex, at least on this side. Flipping it over. Let's see what we see. Okay, there's another area of convexity toward the apex, but it's so tiny, it makes me think they used a paper wheel just to touch it up, just a little. Normally, I reserve this toilet paper roll cutting test for the knives that I sharpen myself. Very seldom does the factory edge measure up to something that is simultaneously firm fibers, yet pliable and very light. And this demonstration determines how well can the blade penetrate and how straight can it cut without deviating. And while my knuckles got in the way of completing the cut, I am still very satisfied with the performance of this edge. I wish I could say we can expect this level of performance out of any and all American-made knives. Unfortunately, it is no longer the case. I'd like to take a look at the etchings on the blade next. I have to say that comparing to the rest of the knife's design, the laser etching looks medieval. It's deep. They burned it hot. You can see right here there's carbonization going on, and the discoloration of the steel around it means that quite a large amount of heat passed through this area. And that's why I don't recommend any laser etchings on the blade. I understand why companies do laser etching versus stamping pre-heat treat. It's a lot less expensive for them this way. Plus, it helps them to sort of weed out fake blades if a knife returns for repair under warranty. But we, as a consumer, need to understand that what they're doing here, they're superheating the steel in this area to the point that it evaporates. And it is done after the heat treat. I can't see how it could be good for the blade. Let me know how you feel about this in the comments. Working our way out of the blade into the handle, it is deceptively light and thin, all thanks to these numerous milled-in stiffeners, spacers. They imitated a integral design without it actually being an integral design, building a very strong structure. And speaking of that, aluminum being very ductile and carbon fiber very hard and stiff, the two materials complement each other very well. I was so intrigued by the design, I took some measurements. Each scale is 162 thousandths of an inch thick. The depth of these holes on the back of the scale is 121 thousandths. So doing some math here, we get 42 thousandths of an inch. Before I test the blade, I will recalibrate the device, getting it into calibration mode. This is certified, this block is certified from the manufacturer to be at 58.7 Rockwell. But during calibration, the scale switches to HLD. That's what you're going to be seeing here. Target being 787 points, HLD. And after 5 strikes, it will give me the average. 785, which is 2 points under on that scale, so I'm going to add those 2 points. Okay, now I'm going to flip it on the side where I'm testing and validate that calibration. Some viewers commented that this device is not equal in accuracy to the shop floor models. Actually, I agree. This device is rated plus or minus 0.2, while the shop floor models are rated plus or minus 0.5. This device is more accurate. Why do leap testers exist? Let's hypothetically say that I design a bracket that needs to be welded to a skin of an armored vehicle. The process for welding high hard steel is complicated and requires validation of hardness after the welding completed. And you know, if you try to drive a tank under a Rockwell Hardness Tester, it wouldn't go too well for the tester. And that's where the leap comes in. The reason these are not used in the shops is because they're slow. So if you're testing a large batch, the floor model is the way to go. I get 57.7. So I'm like 1 whole point under after calibration. So I'm just going to add this point to the end result. So I put a little bit of the gel on the test block. And the reason is when they heat treat steels, this area can settle a little bit and give you a little bit of concavity. So it is better to fill this concavity with incompressible liquid. All liquids are incompressible. Okay, so we're placing it on here. Now it sits pretty flat. The method of putting liquid under the blade came recommended from a channel called Blade Lab Miami. Thank you. That flat interface between the blade and the block is critical to negate the lack of thickness of the blade. And another subscriber, Boston Sean, recommended the use of the lapel mic. When I'm filming, I'm not wearing clothes with lapels, so I hope it's okay that I use it, not as designated. And let's test. We need to set it to Rockwell. Miami and Boston, pretty far apart. These tests can get pretty tedious, but I don't mind. I actually like doing it, even though sometimes it takes me into wee hours of the morning. Why did it agree to that reading? And that's exactly what I mean by tedious. All right, there was an outlier. I can calculate for that. I'm just going to retest at this point. I would like to take an opportunity to thank those subscribers who gifted super thanks to my channel. I appreciate your generosity. And I am also going to thank everyone who commented, asked questions, hit the like button, and shared my content with their friends. This was a clean test, so we're at 64.1, which is for a EDC slicer, not designed for saltwater applications. This is a perfect Rockwell Hardness. Even without the correction, 63 is very respectable. And more importantly, is within the advertised range from the Kershaw website. This is my request for all my viewers. When you see retailers not advertising hardness, please comment on their videos. To wrap up the blade discussion, I'd like to point out how beautiful this silky grind is on the primary bevel. Just the way the light hits it, it's stunning. Multicolor, beautiful. Not to mention how it plays off the handles. Let's talk about the handle. I know, it seems kind of slim to you just looking at the pictures, but somehow they figured out the thickness to length ratio. I don't know what the secret is, but it feels in hand almost as girthy as this knife, which is Benchmade Mini Adamas Auto. And that is a girthy knife. Look at the blade size, also very similar. Of course, it will never measure up to the Adamas family of knives ergonomics, but it's coming closer than I thought, and definitely closer than the Benchmade Mini Claymore, which is one of my favorite knives in this small out-the-side automatic genre. The blade length is very similar. The handle is about the same length and width, so you would think they would feel similarly in hand. But Mini Claymore feels less girthy in hand. I think, going back to that length to thickness ratio, look at these knives. And it's done without much penalty in weight due to the use of aluminum. Mágica. That's magic in Spanish. And speaking of magic, let's talk about what this Wharncliffe has to offer on an EDC knife with a pretty hard-working DNA. I mean, it's a slightly modified box cutter shape, but if you need to bear down on something hard, the grip is there to support it. And for hands small and large and everything in between, this handle facilitates a pretty good defensive grip with edge out and thumb on the pommel of the handle. With the thumb pressing down firmly, it serves as a finger guard because there is no forward guard or even finger cutout or choil. When you thrust, that thumb on the pommel prevents your fingers from slipping onto the blade. This is more or less a Northern European or Japanese school of thought where a small knife can be used as a working tool or as a defense weapon. So as a reviewer, I can't help liking that while it's definitely an EDC slicer, it can also serve you well in an extreme situation where get off me kind of needs to be stated. And on my channel, this is how I test that so-called defensive capability. I use this retired bulletproof Kevlar vest and 2 pieces of 2-inch insulation foam. And for comparison, let's start with Kershaw's own live wire. This one cuts like butter because of its blade shape. That's been always a challenge for wider blades without the dagger point. So let's see how this performs. To be honest with you, I'm a little nervous because I haven't tested the lock for resilience. So I feel like I may be pulling the strike a little bit. My fear is irrational because the material of the vest will actually arrest the blade as soon as it starts penetrating. But that one felt a little too easy because I think I struck the existing hole. So let's reposition the vest to clearly intact area and try it again. And that wasn't even a full swing strike. Kevlar vests have some kind of viscous resin inside, and that's what mars the blade. But it gives us a clear indication how deep the knife went. This was the deepest penetration here, but predominantly it stopped in this area. And you can see the same picture on the opposite side of the blade. When I wiggled the knife out of the vest, That's, I think, what you're seeing here. So several times it went to that depth, at least once to this depth, but it was a suspiciously light strike. So I think we're talking about 2 to 2.5 inches penetration into a Kevlar vest, which is probably the best I gotten out of a knife that is not a dagger shape. Yeah, Warncliffe shape is no joke. And compare it to what other companies make in the genre, meaning aluminum handle out the side automatics. Here's Benchmade Stimulus, also the same blade length, which is 3 inches, spot on. A very popular knife is Protec PT Strider, which, while looking quite differently, has actually very similar personality because it's also an EDC defense knife combination here. Strider is famous for devising this thumb shelf on the pommel of the knife, and I really dig that design. Call me tactical, but hey, I'll take it. The knife comes with milled-in provisions for a lanyard, or as one of my viewers incessantly kept pointing out, should be called a fob. If you guys feel that a lanyard on a knife should be called a fob, please write a comment. If you disagree, also write a comment. I would like to have this discussion. I'm kind of a lanyard hog. I think they're useful because if you're carrying a deep carry knife, this lanyard can come in handy in pulling it out of the pocket. But it doesn't matter what I think, I would like to know what you think. Kershaw and ZT have been creeping up on me lately. Just look on the right here how much my collection of their knives grew over a period of 1.5 years. And so did my collection of Spyderco on the left. And speaking of Spyderco, if you are not a subscriber yet, when this logo comes up on the right of your screen, don't forget to hit it so that you can subscribe. Otherwise, you will miss my next video about Spyderco, where I answer the questions like, does mixing H2 with H2O cause more or less corrosion? Will my Carter handles make crewwear blade harder or softer? Is making Water Series knife with black handles helping or hurting the corrosion resistance? And finally, the question we all want to know in a paramilitary, what does para stand for? Is it alongside or contrary? That was nerd humor. I am strongly not recommending you repeating any of the experiments you've seen here at home because it can cause personal injury or damage to your prized possessions. But if you were engaging in perfectly innocent daily activity that caused your knife to gunk up like this, I strongly recommend a complete disassembly and clean out, a video for which I already posted on my channel under the playlist called Do It Yourself or DIY.